Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I am your host, Rob Giardinelli, and I'm really excited about today's podcast because this is a very unique circumstance that was pulled off so beautifully and so magnificently. It needs to be, the voice needs to be shared here. And that is, we have Jessica Cardenas, who is the Director of Annual Giving at the Elizabeth Ann Seton Board, as well as Maryam Fernandez, who is an event producer for EASB's annual event. And this year's theme was La Dolce Vita. What was interesting about this event was they basically had to change their locale in a 72-hour period. So it was a whirlwind to do that. And the fact that they were able to do that and still raise over $1.3 million for the organization is really a truly dazzling experience. And I had the good fortune of being at this event and just seeing just the sheer joy that everyone had in the room. So, I really wanted to celebrate Jessica, Maryam, and the entire team for just a job well done. And to serve as inspiration for you and others that, La Dolce Vita was the theme, which is an Italian for the good life, and there were literal lemons on the logo. They didn't make lemonade, they made limoncello, and it was this beautiful, sweet event. So with that, Jessica, Maryam, welcome, and I'm so excited to have you both on as guests today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So, we're going to direct the first question to Jessica. And Jessica, talk a little bit about what the mission of the Elizabeth Ann Seton Board is.
So the Elizabeth Ann Seton Board is an amazing group of about 80 women that volunteer for the Ascension Seton Foundation. And so they are dedicated to improving the lives of Central Texans, and they do that through fundraising, education, and advocacy. And for about the last 10 years, they've been raising money for the NICU at ASMCA, our main hospital here in Austin. Ascension Seton is a nonprofit Catholic healthcare system. And so we are the safety net hospital here in Central Texas. And so when people come to the hospital, they're going to be treated, and not just treated, but get amazing care, whether they have the ability to pay or not. And so that's where philanthropy really comes in for us. Is being able to have all the top equipment and all those things that we need, but also being able to serve the community. And so that's where the Elizabeth Ann Seton Board really comes in and can supplement that.
That's amazing. And would you mind, just for guests who may not be familiar with the term NICU, just to elaborate a little bit on what that is and why it's so important?
Yes. So our NICU, it's a neonatal intensive care unit. So that's where babies who are born prematurely go. And if they need specialized care or they need help breathing when they're born, but it's really important to have this for those babies that aren't necessarily ready to join us in this world, but they join us prematurely. The amazing nurses that we have and doctors who are able to take these babies from being born at 1.5 pounds, where you can hold them in your hand, to full grown, thriving children. It's just an amazing sight.
It really is. And it's really a special organization that so many people, throughout the Austin community are involved in. And, with that involvement, I kind of want to turn to how each of you got involved with the organization. And Maryam, we were talking a little bit in the green room about your journey getting involved here. So I'd love for you to, share how you initially got involved with this organization.
Sure. So I actually was born at Seton many, many years ago. So I love that I get to work with them. But I have been an event producer for quite some time, and I had the honor of being a part of the team that produced the grand opening of Dell Children's Medical Center in Mueller over 15 years ago. And that was kind of the start of my relationship with the Seton Family Hospitals, and now Ascension Seton. And I have gone on to basically be a part of every single hospital grand opening here in Austin. And I have the honor of working on a number of their galas. We've done groundbreakings. I've even had the opportunity to work on some of their sponsorship opportunities around town and help, organize volunteers and things like that. So it has been one of my most treasured relationships when it comes to clients. So I'm very honored to be a part of it.
Fantastic. And Jessica, I know you joined the organization within the last few years. So I'd love to know how you found Seton and how Seton found you and why you chose to work with this organization for this aspect of your career.
Well, so before I worked at Seton and kind of before COVID, I worked for the American Cancer Society for quite a few years. And so working there, we had a really great partnership with Seton and provided services to the patients that were going through cancer treatment. So prior to working here, I already knew the mission, I already knew the great work. And so after COVID and, kind of trying to get back into the job market, this opportunity became available. And I just knew that it was an organization that I wanted to work for and did amazing things. And so I just feel very honored to be a part of this team.
That's fantastic. And what's interesting is you both joined, whether it's been a long time or a recent amount of time. I can tell you're both very passionate about the organization. So Maryam, what makes you so passionate about this organization that you've been involved with it for a decade and a half?
I think it's this local community. I've always kind of said, Austin is still a small town, even though we're getting, big. And I've just seen what Ascension Seton does, for our community. And so I have just this, huge respect for the doctors and nurses. I always said it's not a field I ever could work in, but I'm glad that I can at least support them when it comes to the events and the fundraising and things like that they do. So I've just really enjoyed being around them and just being able to help, with this, bring their events and stuff to life. I've just been very, very blessed to do it.
That's fantastic. And Jessica, what makes you so passionate about, this organization and the work that you're doing to really reach so many tentacles of the community?
For me, and just being in the nonprofit industry for 20 years, it's multiple things. I think with this foundation, what is so special is that it's so local. You can see the benefits of the community and the people in the community and the money helping them directly. To me, that's very special. And it's very motivating. With other larger kind of national organizations, sometimes it's harder to see that personal benefit that people are getting from the work that you're doing. And the other part of that for me too is the volunteers. The members of EASB are amazing. There's so many people that are wanting every year to join us and to help. And that's rare. I don't want to say rare, but not all organizations have that. And just to have so many people that are eager to help and want to join the organization is also motivating too, because you know that you're part of something special.
Absolutely. And one way that you all do that really effectively is with your annual spring fundraising gala. So talk a little bit, Jessica, about, the concept of the spring signature fundraising event. Just elaborate a little bit on it. And we'll get into more specifics later, but just to give people a high level understanding.
So each year, usually the third week, of April, we have our gala event. It's a little bit different than a lot of other galas. At least I feel like Maryam can put her 2 cents on that too, but it's an outdoor event. So it feels a little bit more relaxed, more kind of Austin. And so it just has a different vibe. We have between, I would say, 800 to 1,000 people attending. So it's just a really unique kind of atmosphere, and we look forward to it every year. We have a different theme every year that's fun and people can dress up. And so that just kind of gives it a little bit of a unique thing that people look forward to attending every year.
I'm glad you brought up themes, because the one thing I always can't wait to see your invitation every year, because they're always really, really, really fun themes. So talk a little bit about, how the team comes up with a theme for each year, and specifically how you came up with the little Dolce Vita theme this year. And either one of you feel free to answer first.
I'll go first. I think it depends on the year and who the president of EASB and the gala chairs are. Most of the time we know. So right after that April event, we kind of know who the next year's leadership is going to be. And they're already thinking. And so usually by the time I join in the conversation, they already know what they want to do, which is great because, they get to use that creativity that they have. And it's fun to see each person's kind of unique thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure where they came up with the little Dolce Vita this year, but I mean, we had mood boards and, there was a lot of inspiration for us this year. And it was a very fun theme.
So, I'd love to hear a little bit about this theme, Maryam, from you, and talk a little bit about how fun themes inspire you creatively to really put on, and produce these events. Because every single one of the EASB events I've ever been to is always top-notch and fantastic. So talk a little bit about how these themes stretch you creatively and, kind of some of the approaches that you took to this theme this year.
Well, like Jessica said, as soon as the president and gala chairs have kind of nailed down their theme, then I'm brought into the mix and to figure out how we can bring this to life for them. We are also, it is a nonprofit event, and I've just been in this nonprofit world for so long. So, we're obviously very careful about what we're spending. And so we get very creative. I have amazing vendors that I work with. So they are able to kind of help us bring this vision that our president and chairs have, to life, but still working within our budget, so that we can still create an event that all these guests are so excited to attend. But yeah, I mean, I work a lot. I mean, we'll meet weekly sometimes with them, with the chairs and the president, and Jessica and them at Seton. And so we just really do our due diligence on, what are the most important pieces that they want at the event. I mean, there's things this year that we were like, okay, you know what, we can do without this, but this is something we really want. And so it's like, just kind of, playing off of that and what's important. And then, my vendors kind of help bring it to life.
So speaking of bringing it to life, you all had let's just say a curveball, and that was Mother Nature decided not to play nice this year. So it required this last minute venue change due to weather. And, it's one of those things, and anyone who's in Texas knows weather can be unpredictable. So I know the thought that goes into, do we do it or not? Because it really is a crapshoot on some level. Now, this year, it wound up raining really, really hard, and it wound up being that way. So I love Jessica from an organizational perspective, and then Maryam from a event planning perspective. When you realized that you were going to have to make this change, what were your first thoughts?
I don't know if we can say that on air.
Yeah. I think, the first reaction is, because our event has so many people, like, where can we even have it that will hold this amount of people? And so it was multiple days of really agonizing and looking into places. And I think we started to know that a traditional event space was not going to work just because of our size, so last minute. And so that's when really the volunteer leadership started to get creative and come up with some ideas. And we were just very lucky that we have a longtime volunteer who had a space. They were willing to donate. They were amazing. And we just got really lucky that we were able to find a space. But, a car dealership is not a conventional space to have an event. And so that's where Maryam and all her amazing expertise and vendors came in and really made it fantastic. So I don't know that we knew it was gonna happen or if it was gonna work, but we knew we were gonna try and we were gonna put our best effort.
So I'm glad to hear you say that, and I think that's a good segue to have Maryam bring your first thoughts of, okay, you said you can't necessarily say it on air, but so and I know Jessica's needs, or Jessica's thoughts were probably a little bit more to the donors and how do I get these people there, and yours is, how do I shift that whole logistics line from one venue to another? So what were your first thoughts when you heard, okay, the weather's really going to be bad and I've got to make that change?
Yeah, I mean, well, and the thing is with any outdoor event, we always have a rain plan in that is just part of our plan. So we already knew, and every year, honestly, during load-in and stuff for this gala, I have been up to my ankles sometimes in rain. And then it miraculously clears for the actual gala. But this year was complete opposite. It was sunshine, and all we saw was Saturday. That Saturday was going to be torrential downpours. And we had put our rain plan in place where it's adding more tenting and everything. But once we saw that there's going to be, thunderstorms and lightning, and that is not a safe, space for guests to be under tents. I had started looking at indoor venues, kind of striking out again, like to Jessica's point, we're a big group. And I think that's when, Jessica and the team reached out to our amazing board. And so, the board is so well connected in this town, and having, them, especially like our president and our gala chairs, I couldn't have asked for a more amazing team to work with. And every year they're wonderful, but these gals just really, they dug deep and they made an effort to see who had connections and other venues, and just to Jessica's point, get really creative. And so when, the option of going to First Texas Honda came up, which I've been to a million times because I have a Honda and I go there for service. So then it was like, okay, now I got to go and really think of how do we transform this space and make it work for an event. And so the folks there on the ground were just absolutely amazing. They were incredibly accommodating. I felt like I was kind of invading their home, and asking them, can you move this? Can you move that? To make space for us. And it was incredible. I mean, they cleared that showroom in probably an hour or two. And they were like, all right, have at it, do your thing. It was just mind blowing.
That really is incredible to hear. And, the one question I have is, because you do have 80 board members, and Jessica, I want to direct this next question to you. What were some steps that you all took so that there was kind of a level of funneling, filtering, vetting of these suggestions? Because, I mean, getting 80 different opinions could get really overwhelming really, really fast. So what are some steps that you and the organization took to find a new venue and make sure to, vet it properly?
I think that was a big part of it, because a lot of the spaces that were being suggested were just kind of not necessarily really an option for us, because from our side, even though maybe it was an indoor space, we still have to think about the safety of our guests. Is our insurance going to cover it? All those back end things that we had to think about. And so, as people and our volunteers are throwing out those ideas, not necessarily all of them would work. And then same thing really with First Texas Honda. It's a car dealership. So is it a place that we can make sure is safe, that our insurance will cover, that, we can really make it to what it's supposed to be? And so, we really appreciated all the help that we got. There were multiple locations that we were kind of looking at, but this one was really sort of our best option. It had the space, and they've had events there before. Jenny Hill again was amazing in offering the space up for us, and just really working with us on all those back end things. I'm pretty sure they got like a special insurance policy for us, like really just making sure to make it happen. And it happened that all the things lined up together. We were able to get everything approved, in 12 hours, basically, so that Maryam could kind of start working her magic. So, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it really takes a lot of people to make it happen. And we're just very lucky to have the team that we have. So
Now, that's a perfect segue, I think, into Maryam, because I want to, because yes, we got to find the space, and we've got, we work with sponsors and donors to get that. You then have to go and deal with all the logistics. So what were the steps that you took to work with vendors so that it seemed, because I will tell you, it was extremely seamless from a guest point of view. What steps did you take to ensure that happened with the vendors, to make sure that was executed smoothly?
Well, I am very lucky with the vendors that I work with. I've had a long-standing relationship with most of them. And this event actually has over 40 vendors that are involved. And so the key, vendors from the very beginning, we actually start loading in typically on the Monday before the gala at Camp Mabry. And so from the moment that we had seen that there could be a chance of rain, I had been in constant contact with all of them. And so, it was very much of keeping communication, whether it was email, phone, texting, letting them know that there is a chance, that we might have to, move last minute or something. And so everybody kind of knew. It wasn't a surprise, to them. And then I also, once some of these unconventional venues were coming into the mix, again, I was talking to my key vendors, the ones that provide lighting, the ones that provide audio, rentals, just to make sure that, okay, these places that are being, brought up to us would work. And, because again, we do all this work all year to plan this event. And the last thing we want is to jeopardize, the look and the feel and the experience that guests are going to have. And so I was on the phone probably way more that particular week than I have been in a long time, but it was just a matter of constantly keeping in touch with my, with my team. And then once I had kind of there was a chance that we were going to have it at Honda, I was able to go walk the space. And that was that Thursday before the gala, about 5:00. I got to go see the space. And that evening when we got the green light, I immediately reached out to the main, vendors and told them, hey, who can meet me 9 a.m. tomorrow, at Honda. And so there was a group of us that met up, first thing Friday morning. And like my rep at my rental team, shout out to Marquee Rentals, because our rep Bridget immediately started measuring. So she had to create an all new table diagram for me. And then we had to send that table diagram to Jessica to be like, okay, you have to reassign, 80 tables. Sorry. And my sound guys came. My lighting guys, unfortunately, they were at Camp Mabry tearing down everything that they had put up to move it. So my sound guys were sending them pictures from Honda and showing them like, okay, here's, what it's looking like. Our catering lead, she came out, our bar team came out. Everybody just, that Friday, it was just all hands on deck. And like I said, the team at Honda they let us do our thing. And any time I needed anything or had a question for them, they were right there to help us out. And they let us work kind of late into the night. And then we kind of finished on Saturday, and then our volunteer team, like our board members, actually came Saturday morning. They always come the morning of the gala, and they help put linens down, and they help put table numbers. And so our amazing board members showed up, ready to go Saturday as well. And they helped. So having, all hands on deck that morning was amazing. But yeah, I mean, if I could, toot every one of my vendors' horns, I will, because they're the reason that I'm able to execute these events. I mean, it is not me. I can do all the planning, I can put everything on paper, but without the support of those vendors, this would, not come together. It's just been amazing. And I think one of them said this was like the most kumbaya group that we ever had.
That's incredibly important. And, it's when everyone's on the same page, it makes situations like this that can feel rather tense, much easier to handle. So, we've gone through, we've got the space, we're doing the logistics. Now we need to get the people there. So, I'm glad, Maryam, you kind of brought up about Jessica having to basically kind of redo a whole table diagram, just based on the logistics and, the limitations of that space versus what you had previously. So, Jessica, I'd love to hear, and you guys really did do such an effective job because you all were in communication via email pretty frequently. Talk a little bit about how you communicated with the sponsors, the donors, and the attendees to let them know the show's still going on. It's going to be just as fun. We're just going to move the party inside somewhere else. So talk a little bit about how you work to make sure that the guests and the donors still all wanted to be there.
Yeah, and I do have to say that it is the vendors and they're amazing, but it is Maryam. And I think the key to it working is having someone that you can trust, because us being able to communicate and do all of those things was because we knew that Maryam was there taking care of all of the logistics and that it was going to be taken care of, and we didn't have to worry about any of that. I think, the vendors are amazing, but they are so loyal to her because of that relationship that she has with them. And so, she's tooting their horn, but I'm going to toot hers because you have to have that trust. And I just knew that we could do our thing and make our back end stuff work because Maryam is there and we trust her to just make it happen, and she has, the best intentions and will do whatever it takes to make it work. But going back to that, and so we really wanted to make sure that we could communicate with everybody as much as possible, over communicate, so that we knew that no one that was planning to attend the event was not aware of the change. And so I think it was Friday morning or even Thursday, we kind of sent out an email saying, we're aware of the weather. We're coming up with a plan. The event is still happening. We'll kind of keep you updated. So everyone knew kind of to look out for communication on any change. And then Friday morning, once we knew it was happening at Texas Honda, we had the plan. Maryam was over there doing her thing. Then we were communicating that change. And so we kind of did it in steps. We wanted our volunteers and our EASB members to know first. And so we sent an email specific to them directly from me. And so it wasn't just like a mass kind of email. It was something personal from me to them, because we want them to know that the work that they've done for the last year, getting sponsors, getting auction items, like everything that they've done, that we want to move forward. We're moving forward. We're doing our best to make this event happen. And so we communicated with them first. And then we moved on to the sponsors and just kind of general ticket holders, I guess, and sent multiple emails, or maybe one or two emails on Friday, and then even on Saturday, kind of morning time, saying we're looking forward to seeing you. We used Instagram and social media to kind of get it out there as well, and really asked our volunteers to share on their social media as well. So we really felt like we kind of covered all those bases for everyone to know.
Well, I mean, props to all of you, because it really, now we're kind of getting up to the point where, everyone starts to arrive. And I've got to tell you, when I walked in, everyone was turned out attire-wise. The energy in the room was really high. There was a roar in the room. people were there and people were present and they were wanting, really ready to party. So,
Mhm.
I'd love for each of you to, kind of bring your own perspective here, and we'll start with Maryam. But how do you think that theme of, because La Dolce Vita literally is the good life, how do you think that
Mhm.
theme helped really maintain the high energy that people brought to the gala, even though it was in a different place than that people originally planned?
Well, I think with, the theme, obviously we try to bring it to life through the decor, linens, all of that. But then one thing about this event is our guests, like everyone that comes to the event, they embrace the theme. And so it's almost like their attire and everything just added to the energy and to just the look and feel. Because again, I kept laughing. I'm like, we are in a car dealership. Like, how are we going to, make this look like an EASD gala? But ultimately, it did. I mean, we kind of put up some black curtains around to kind of hide things that were in the dealership. And then, but once all of our guests started arriving and just their amazing clothes, I think that in itself just added to it. I think people were ecstatic that they weren't in the rain. So that I think made them very happy. We had some great cocktails being poured. So, very in theme and, that helped. And just, just like little fun activations. Again, it was just one of those things where we had to just take everything that we had been planning for and make it fit at First Texas Honda. And, if I could go back, I mean, if I had had a little bit more time, sure, there's so many things that I probably would have, added or done differently or something. But I'm just so happy to know that, from the guest side, that y'all had a good experience. Because I've always kind of told my clients, I could do all the planning in the world, but, again, they are responsible for getting the client, getting the guests there. And so I'm just, to see all these people coming in, just smiling and happy and, till the end. Obviously, as exhausted as my team and I were, we couldn't help. I mean, we all toasted at the end. I mean, we were just so thrilled to see this and see the outcome.
And the outcome was, spectacular. I mean, it was $1.34 million. I mean, that's amazing. And Jessica, I'd love to hear it from an organization point of view. How do you think that theme and the fact that every year you come up with good themes and people want to turn it out, how do you think that helped bring all that great energy to the gala from an organization perspective?
I definitely think it keeps people excited, because especially the women, like they've thought about what outfit they're going to wear for months, based off of the theme. And so they're preparing in advance. And so they want to come and they want to celebrate. And, they've worked so hard. I think that's a big part of it too, is that the volunteers put so much time and energy into this event. They want to make it happen. And so the fact that we were able to move it and we didn't have to cancel, that just added to the excitement, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know it's about throwing a big party and everybody having a really good time, but they really do want to raise as much money for the mission as they can. And they knew that was not going to happen if we didn't actually have the event. And so I think just the fact that we were able to move it and we were still going to have an event, everybody had a seat to sit in, all those things, added on to having a fun theme, I think really kept that excitement up. And just knowing that the organization and Maryam, like we're all willing to work to make sure that the work that they've done throughout the last year can come to fruition and make it happen. And, I think it was funny because it was a last minute change and it was crazy for us, but even down to some of the women were like, I could wear my stilettos that I couldn't have worn at Camp Mabry,
Yeah.
So, it's just a different perspective. And I think, it turned out great. And we really have heard a lot of positive feedback, very little negative feedback at all. And so from my perspective, and I think from Maryam's perspective as well, like that's really what makes us feel successful, is that people had fun. And because that's something that we were thinking about too, I think before the event and planning this, like we don't want to put something on where there's a bad event experience and people don't want to come back. And so the fact that people were happy and having fun ensures that next year they're going to want to come back. And so that was super exciting for us too.
Absolutely. And there was one thing that you all did that I really thought was truly genius. So, I've been to this event, several times before, but every year there's always kind of like a time lapse on like a monitor that shows you all putting it together where it normally is at Camp Mabry. And I love that you did that this year, but you started with, it wasn't like, we're just going to do this one thing. And I thought it was really powerful to see, the video of Camp Mabry going up, then Camp Mabry going down. Then it immediately pivoted to first Texas Honda going up. But what I loved about it was, because sometimes people are like, do I acknowledge it doesn't exist? And it's like, absolutely not. Because from an organization perspective, the donors see how hard you all worked to put this on. And I thought it was just really wonderful to see that time lapse with that added element. I was like, wow, that's really cool to kind of see that, they brought it up, like you said, you start on Monday for Saturday. So, I mean, this was a days-long process to begin with. I just thought that that was a really powerful thing. And I can see why donors were able to really connect with this event when you had something that powerful like that as imagery.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I mean, we do the time lapse every year, and but I think this year definitely it stood out more because of the change. And so, but yeah, I work my production team. They come out Monday morning when we start. When the tents and everything are coming out, they set up that camera, and every day, we change the location just to capture the setup. And so, of course, when I had called them and said, okay, we're going to Honda, they said, okay, I'll meet you there with the camera. So we can capture it. I mean, it really, and I think in the time lapse, what was really fun, I think my favorite part is watching the part where all of our board members were there, putting linens down and table numbers and things like this, and just watching them, how many had shown up and full force and just ready to help. So it is, the time lapse is always one of my favorite keepsakes from the events, for sure.
Absolutely. And, this brings me to my next question. And I know, I don't even know what the answers are going to be, but I know they'll be pretty good. So Jessica, we'll start with you. What is one thing you will take that you learned from this year to next year's gala?
I think definitely to be a little bit more prepared. Like we had a rain plan, but there's a difference between rain and like thunderstorms that we have here in Central Texas. And so, and I think we've been really lucky for the last several years. I think even since Maryam started being the event producer for this event, that we've had good weather on the day of. So this is kind of the first time we've been through this. So I think moving forward this year, we will definitely have more of a plan, and have more of a plan to make that decision earlier. I think it's important for us to make the decision before like all those vendors have started setting up, because I think that was the hard part, is asking those vendors to take everything down and then redo everything in another location. It's like them doing double work pretty much. And so we're very grateful that they were willing to do that. But I think we thought we were prepared, but I think just being prepared to make that decision a little bit earlier will help with kind of the flow of everything.
Fantastic. And Maryam, I'd love your take on this as well.
Yeah, it's kind of what Jessica said. I think, we've discussed, if we're going to keep an outdoor event, moving forward, then, do we have an indoor option that we just, maybe we have a first right of refusal on, up until a certain date. or do we just pay a fee to have a indoor option, saved for us? And so because, it is challenging to move this size group, and there's not a lot of places that can hold us. So I think moving forward, that's kind of what we've talked about. But yeah, I've had a really great weather streak for 20 years. And so I don't know what happened, but it just, and we kind of joked the whole time. We're like, watch, it's going to be like a drop of rain or something. We're going to do all this, work to move. But my guys at Camp Mabry did tell me that there was quite a bit of rain and stuff that did come down. So we did make the right decision in moving.
Absolutely. So I know we're coming up on time, but I want to end with one question, and I really want to end this really celebrating you all. And we'll start with Maryam and then we'll end with Jessica. What is the one thing you're most proud of from this year's event?
Oh, I mean, it's the team. It's just the team from the Ascension Seton side. I've always had this mutual, trust and respect with anybody at Ascension Seton. And then to have that relationship with our vendors. But I mean, it was literally the ultimate team effort to make this, come to life. I mean, every event has its challenges, that I have done throughout my career. And we don't go into these events thinking that it's going to be, absolutely perfect or anything like that. We always kind of try to plan for anything that might pop up. But this one, it was just the ultimate team, experience. And it ranged everywhere from our leadership at Ascension Seton, down to even like the folks who were cleaning. I was, we're high-fiving at the end of, how, great everything, turned out. So that's probably, what I take away is just, I'm very grateful for everybody that was involved.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And Jessica, what about you?
I feel like mine's kind of the same, and I will piggyback off of what Maryam said, because it really took a team effort and also the team trusting each other to make those things happen. And, the volunteers trusting us as the foundation staff to make all those back end things happen so that it could work. And then us trusting Maryam and the vendors to know that the logistical part is going to happen. And so I think it was a huge team effort, but just having teams that know each other, that trust each other to come through in the end is it makes it a great experience, and it makes it where each person can do their job and not have to worry about what the other's doing, because we trust that it's just happening. And it really did. And so super honored and grateful to work with the people that we work with. And I don't know if another team could have pulled it off, but
I'm going to go and say you all are the best there is. And I don't know if any other team could have pulled off what you all did, because it really was amazing. And hopefully on Sunday, you all celebrated with lots of limoncello, brunch, and had you were probably too tired, but hopefully you did that like the next weekend or something. So I can't thank you both enough for being here today. Maryam, Jessica, thank you again so much. And congratulations on a great event this year.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and y'all's support of our events is amazing. So thank you for
my pleasure as always. And for more information on Elizabeth Ann Seton Board's annual Spring Fundraising Gala, please visit supportseton.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.